All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I always say this, it's post lunch, a hot afternoon pretty much all across the country. So if you want to still grab yourself some cold coffee, water, please do so. We could start another 30 seconds. Also, while we've muted everybody currently, I'm going to request everyone. I'm going to request everyone to kindly keep yourself muted during the session. We will take about 10 to 20 minutes towards the latter half of the hour to take comments from you, questions. But in the meantime, please feel free to keep putting in your comments, questions in the chat box that you see here. Our speakers will take those either during the session or in case we're unable to take those questions, then we'd be happy to take those offline directly with the person asking the question. So on that note, welcome everyone. I see a few familiar names and faces, so great to see all of you here. My name is Devina Nigam. I'm a consultant with Atma. I do want to tell you a little bit about Atma, about the Atma webinars, why we're here. Atma is an accelerator for education. We're an organization that supports education NGOs to become bigger, better, stronger by building capacities and creating systems and processes to solve common organizational development issues that the organization might face. We started our journey in 2007, and since we've supported more than 85 organizations in their journey of excellence. At Atma, we understand the importance of shared knowledge, especially in a sector like ours where resources are anyway so limited and pretty much scarce in some situations. Therefore, the webinar series started as a space for us to be able to share learnings, ideas, perspectives about matters that, well, all of us NGOs really face on a daily basis. Atma Webinar is a curated platform where speakers share their practical experiences that could benefit other NGOs. For those of you who attended this in the past would know that the topics of these webinars really range from anything from human resource management to program management to communication strategy to fundraising and today finance. So in today's webinar, as all of you know, it is going to be based on finance and budget. We will talk about what really makes for, what it takes to build a good organization budget. The three key learnings that we'd want all of us to take back from this session are one, how to forecast major expenses, how to classify program and admin costs, and thirdly, methods of allocating costs in program-wise budget. The remaining, I'd really let the speakers sort of take us through the specifics of each of this. But before that, let me also introduce our speakers today. My wonderful colleagues, Sanil and Anuj. Sanil Garat is an associate consultant at Atma. He has a master's in commerce from Mumbai University. He comes with over a decade of experience working in the finance sector with multiple organizations. Over the weekends, Sanil loves to play cricket, watches action movies, but I think lately he's just been spending all his weekends with his lovely, absolutely gorgeous little twin girls. You might see them during webinar today. I hope we get a chance to. But yeah, I don't know so much about cricket anymore. um, Moving to Anuj. Anuj is an associate at Atma. He's a chartered accountant and has about 7 years of experience working in, of course, the finance sector, or rather finance space in the corporate sector. Before making this shift to the sector with Atma, he's worked earlier with the likes of Ernst& Young, Deloitte. Anuj loves food. He loves art. Just a little bit about both of them. Yeah, with that, handing it over to both Anuj and Sanil.
Hi all. Anuj, can you share the PPT? Yeah. Hi all. Welcome to all our Atma webinar on how to build the budget. Thanks, Devina, for the introduction. In this webinar, we try to cover all the important aspects keep in mind while preparing the budget based on our experience. Can you next slide? In overview, in introductions, we covering why budget is important, when you need to prepare the budget, and how you can prepare the budget. Also, and some method of forecasting you can use for the preparation of budget. Also, we covering some of major expenses we need to be in the budget with some forecasting samples. In program and non-program classification, we are advising which and why expenses need to classify it with some more example of expenses. And lastly, we covering contingency and control points while preparing the budget. And after the budget, then important points for the donor presentation. Next slide, please. Yes. So why budget need to prepare? As an organization, you have some goals or objectives for the next year. And to achieve that, you need to proper plan. And this plan through the budget, you convert in numeric terms. If you have proper detailed budget, then it's easy to convey your donor for a fund. Also, the fund budget you have to proper control on expenditure with properly periodically monitoring. When you need to prepare a budget, it's good if you plan to prepare budget before the 3 months at least of the next financial year. So you will get enough time for the discussion, designing, planning, as well as internal and management approval, if any. Also, if you register under Charity Commissioner Act in Maharashtra, you need to submit your budget before the 20th Feb every year. Then how you can prepare the budget? Once the decision members of your organization, like leadership team, trustees, have a clear vision for the next year, then they can discuss with internal team heads regarding upcoming additional expenses, any requirement. Based on that, all feedback from your team, the past or also the past pendings patterns, with the help of finance team, you can start the preparation of the budget. Also keep in mind that if you're looking for new additional project, so you need to check the additional expenses also, that also you need to check out. Some of the methods of outflow forecasting you can use for the preparation of budget. In trend analysis, you can use past data and analyze it based on average increment rate yearly. It helps you finalize the figures for the next budget. Also, it's good to have internal team discussion. Once the management have clear vision for the next year, they can discuss with internal team about achieving the goals, what additional expenses they require, or what expenses they can cut down. You can also take the quotation from the current service provider for the upcoming expenses or for the budget. as well as the new service provider to comparison between the what is the best for your organization. You also take research by yourself from Google. So much data available on net. So similar kind also, you can take help from similar kind of NGOs as yours. So it's based on their data, you can roughly have idea of what kind of figures and what kind of budget you can prepare. Next slide, please. These are some of type of majorly expenses that you need to consider. First of all, salary it's the most important and most complex expenses. You need to factor many things like inflation rate, increments, performance of the employee, industrial standard, number of years for working experience employee also some of the expenses you need to cover it, like employee provident fund, professional tag, ESIC, if it is applicable to your trust, also any other expenses as per your state. Also, one of the most important expenses which directly depend upon salary, which most of the organization not consider, gratuity. As per labor law, you need to pay gratuity after completion of certain period completed by employee. So it's better to have a certain amount kept aside as a provision for the gratuity. Then program related expenses. You need to factor the direct expenses related to program, like for designing the program, uh, from designing the program to program implementation. All the expenses related to program you need to factor. Example, program related team travel, program related food, program related printing and stationery, that you all need to factor in this side. Then fundraising. In fundraising, you need to consider the expenses related to like crowdfunding campaigns if you are looking, if any platform charges or registration charges for any crowdfunding campaign you need to pay, or maintaining data or other costs in related to fundraising strategy also. Then compliance. For maintaining books of accounts by yourself, then you need to factor software charges also, renewal charges if any. Also, if you're maintaining your books maintaining by other agency or consultancy agency, then that cost also you need to factor. Any consultative other charges means you are taking additional service from your consultant related to accounts or in compliance related, that also you need to factor. Also, the main important things, your audit charges into need to factor in compliance part. Okay. In technology, in this COVID situation, we already know that the importance of technology. It helps to reach your program to maximum people in a short time of period in a better way. So you need to factor all website expenses or any communication expenses that you need to factor. Then software and platform charges. Some of expenses related to purchasing software for maintaining your donations, for providing ATG receipts or donor reports, your proposal, or maintaining your past year's data. Also for the platform charges, if any, for website or crowdfunding, that charges you need to maintain. Capital expenditure. Most of the organization not factor these expenses due to less clarity about future demand, like what need to purchase, like purchasing of assets as per the need. So our advice is to keep some amount aside for purchasing fixed assets like laptops or any projectors that you may require in future. And lastly but important, admin and HR. It's clearly a non-program expenses, and you need to check what will be the cost include, like rent, staff welfare, non-program meetings, expenses related directly to non-program like trustees or board related expense. All need to consider admin and HR. Over to you, Anuj.
Thanks for that introduction, Sanil, and also explaining the methods. Just to give a quick recap before we start looking at expenses individually. Budgets are nothing but they are guardrails for your expenses during the year. Uh, Simple cheese है, you have to plan of what will go out from what we are planning to raise. So it's always better to have, a bird's eye view of what is your spend for the coming year. That is the main intention of the budget. How it is to be prepared is very simple. You need to have clear communication within your organization. Everyone needs to know where is the organization heading, and there has to be proper input from the leadership, the finance team, and as well as the program team. So that is how. Coming to expenses, Anil has given us a very good brief of what expenses are there for the NGO sector, but I will just be picking up few of the most important ones and telling you about them. Also, as Devina said, we've just started after lunch, so that we don't feel sleepy just by text. We will be taking you through some numbers. Uh, so I'll just start. In case anyone has any questions regarding the previous slides, please drop it in the chat box and we'll address that. Coming to forecasting, how do you forecast for your major expenses? The biggest expense most of us have is salary. So for salary, you need to have a performance appraisal in place. When you are trying to budget for the next year, you may adopt an ad hoc number. Say you want to add 5% to the existing salary, but let me tell you that halfway through the year, your numbers would look really different. So you need to have a performance appraisal system. In case you don't have, you can refer to a lot of websites. Atma can help you with how you can set up a system. A performance appraisal system will help you evaluate each of your existing employees, in terms of what is the raise that this employee is going to get, and then you have the number for next year. Say you do not have a performance appraisal system for the current year, the next best option is to do a benchmarking study. Benchmarking study is nothing but reaching out to say 3 or 4 NGOs within the sector who have a similar size as you in terms of your budget, okay, and in terms of your inflow, and check with them what is the average increment rate they give to their employees. So that is benchmarking study. As Anil rightly said, most of us sometimes do not account for PF, ESIC, professional tax. Let me just spend a minute here. Provident fund is applicable to you if you have 20 or more employees. ESIC gets applicable to you if you're a factory, which I'm assuming none of us are here. But if you're an establishment that is paying salaries, to few people below 15,000 and you have 10 or more such people, then ESIC will also get applicable. Last is professional tax. This is very state specific. So if your employee is earning, say, above an XYZ amount, they are, the PF is applicable to them and you need to deduct that from their salary. As far as Maharashtra goes, it is 2,500 per year in case of professional, but you can always check with your state. You can write to us if you want more information about these three and we'll help you. The next thing is role changes. What we usually do is we account for, say, like a new hire that, oh, I will be starting a new program, so I need someone new. But do also account for role changes. If someone within the organization is moving to another role or you're going to promote them, so do account for these changes as well. Last is inflation rate. We just come out of the pandemic, I would like to say that. So, there was a phase where maybe you would have not been able to give an increment, but some organizations have, just taken the inflation rate as it and added it to their salary. So do take that into consideration, even if you're not looking forward to a full-fledged, appraisal, do take the inflation rate into account. Okay. Next is the technology upgrade. Technology upgrade is simple, is basically your laptop cost or say your computer cost in case you provide the same to your employee. The quotes are readily available. We have a lot of e-commerce players now, Amazon, Flipkart. You can also refer to websites that give refurbished laptops. You could refer to prices out there, and while budgeting, account for it. Say if you need 5 laptops and a refurbished laptop is for 25,000 or 30,000, do multiply and account for it. Next is operating expenses. Your operating expenses are expenses which are needed to run your program as well as to run your organization. When I say program and organization, why am I talking about it differently? Something will come in the next slide. But there would be certain expenses which are needed to run your organization, like a rent or an electricity. While there would be certain examples like printing of stationery for your program, which is your program expense. So there are these expenses fit in operating expense. These expenses are year-on-year expense. They are not exceptional expense or one-time expense. We're going to keep recurring them. So for these expenses, what we suggest is do have a look at your past trend. When I say past trend, we recommend taking at least 3 years into consideration to streamline, the various exceptions, abnormality, and all the economic cycles that you face through those 3 years. You can then come at an average rate and decide an increment rate. It's simple. Say my expense was say XYZ number. When I do an average for 3 years, 10% is the increment that comes on an average basis. So I will apply 10% to my last year figure and come at my next year figure. I'll be taking you through numeric examples here. So in case someone is not understanding, you can wait for that and then obviously ask question if there still is a doubt. If there are expenses that are dependent on multiple factors, please prepare working. We will be looking at one such expense as well. Next is your project expense, depending on variable factors. Uh, there are certain expenses that are very much dependent on how many workshops you conduct, what is the extent of workshops you are conducting, how many people sign up for an in-person workshop, like how many kits will you print. You'll have to rent probably a hall to conduct a seminar. So those sort of project expenses, always plan for them. At the start of the year, do discuss whether you plan to do such events or such programs in person and then account for them. Before we move to the numerics, this is a budget webinar. So we are mostly talking about expense because while budgeting, what you do is account for your expense so that you get a fair idea of what would be the funds you need to raise. Okay, but when you move one step ahead of budget, which is cash flow, you also account for inflows. So now coming to inflow, it is very simple. There are 2-3 points you need to keep in mind. One is your past trend, obviously, how much have you raised previously? What is the committed funding you have in terms of CSR, or are there any foreign donors who've already committed to you? Timing of this funding is very essential because that's how you will manage your expenses. So do get a fair idea from the donor when they plan to fund you. And apart from that, in case you have service income, then do make a working for that as well. How many services are you planning to render? How many organizations will you cater to, and what would be the price? Okay, I'll just stop sharing my screen and move to the other screen. In the meantime, if you have a question, please do add it to the chat. Can everyone see my screen? It's an Excel sheet. I'll just zoom in a bit. So first is we are taking an operating expense, which is your office repair and maintenance. Might sound alien because most of us are in a virtual setup, but yes, if you have an office and there's repair and maintenance that you undertake, so here is the trend. Okay, so what you need to do to find out the trend is have numbers for past 3 to 4 years. I've taken 4 years figure here. What I've done is I've just taken the difference here. By what rate is my number increasing or decreasing, which is nothing, but you will subtract, your existing number from your previous number and then divide it by your previous number. You just see how much has your expense gone up or down compared to the last year. I've taken the trend for 3 years and averaged it out. It comes to 32%. I have my last year number, which is 60,000. Now, again, this is not a foolproof method. This is something that will make your budgeting more sound, but you also need to have discussion and apply rationally. Now, 21-22 is a year where most of us came back to our office setup. So I have incurred a huge expense there. So for the next year, though I have a 32% average rate, I've restricted it to 15% because I know I'll be spending less. I have incurred a major expense last year. So that's why I'm restricting it here and then adding 15% of 60,000, 60,000. We'll be moving to the number and not stopping. But in case you have a question, please do ask. We are, in the interest of time, just explaining things and moving. But please do ask questions if you have. One of us will answer it in the chat box, so we'll take it up in the end. Coming to salary, as we spoke, it is best to have a performance appraisal. Okay, so if you have a performance appraisal, this is what your salary working would look like. You have a base salary as an employee. It was 5 lakh last year. My inflation rate is 4.5%. Now, again, these are not recommended numbers. These are just indicative numbers. For example, if you want to find out the inflation rate, you can refer to the RBI website. They publish the monetary policy. There are other websites in the public domain that also give you inflation rate. So, and you can take the inflation number from there. This is only for illustration purposes. Okay, now say I have a variable performance-based increment. This is when you have a performance appraisal in place. Your employee perform on an average basis. So when they perform at an average level, my increment rate for them is 3%. Okay, you can have like numbers to evaluate the performance. So you can have like a bell curve, or so you can have terms divided in 5 categories. Anything is okay. Just have a number for the percentage. Now, say my total increment comes up to 7.5%, keeping in mind the inflation. Just apply that rate and I get the number. Okay, the salary is fairly simple. Moving to the variable part, which is totally dependent on my program. Say my organization does a lot of in-person workshops. It could be, healthcare workshops. It could be like health checkup camps, or it could just be going to schools and doing a workshop once in a month. Now, what has happened is at the start of the year, I need to understand what is the count of this. So for me, I'm going to schools. So I'm just checking how many schools will I go to, how many will be my partner schools. Okay. So I've taken 10 after discussion with my programs team, leadership team. What is the number of kids that will come to the workshop? So they were 20 last year, okay, on an average. But because we've started again in person, so I'm easing out the restriction and making it 30. That is my logic for everything. When you're doing variable expenses, please do document the logic, because by mid-year, if you see your numbers going haywire, you'll come to know if you don't have these documented, you'll never know why you took this number. So always document the rationale, the assumptions, the parameters. Okay, I need to incur 10,000 for my designing charges. This is a consultant who's going to design my kit. How it's going to look, how it is going to be printed, all those things. So it is a 10,000 fixed charge. Okay, you will also have certain fixed charges within your variable charges. To make it simple for people, fixed वो होता है जो आप one time देते हो और आपको देना ही है. Variable वो होता है जो आपका प्रोजेक्ट के साथ चेंज होते जाएगा. आपके numbers change होंगे स्टूडेंट्स के, तो ये भी change होगा. Coming to a printing rate, for each kit I need to incur a printing rate. Okay, so I've taken that. Now my calculation is simple. What I've done is number of workshops into kit. मतलब एक workshop में कितने बच्चे आएंगे. Okay, and into the rate of printing. So I'll have to print a kit for each kit. So that's how it is. The number of workshops into number of children into the rate. And I've added my fixed cost of 10,000. So this is how to account for variable. Other variable expenses can be like a travel cost. If say you have program mentors or you have, fellows who are going to go to school, then you need to account for their travel. That would be something similar. Just stopping this share and going back to the PPT. Please let us know if you have any questions before we move to the next slide. Yeah, Vanita, it's very organization specific. You also have to see how much funds you have. But what usually people do is refer to the RBI, and whatever is the rate that RBI gives, they take that. But in case you want to have a conservative approach, say you want to ensure that you raise adequate funds, you can take a higher range of the inflation rate. Okay, and then take the performance. So what sometimes people do is they just take the higher range of the inflation rate and do not take the performance. If it is a standard across all employees, but if it's a performance oriented and organization, then obviously you need to have both. And in that case, we would not recommend a very high range of the inflation rate, but do take the inflation rate that RBI mentioned. They give like for average rate, so you can pick that. Sure. Moving to our next slide. We assume that this is the most favorite topic for this webinar because this is the maximum, what people have put as questions in their registration link. So picking up this very debatable topic of program and non-program classification. Before I start with this, let me tell you, this is a very subjective topic. There is no black and white definition for this. Every act comes up with its definition. Every organization has its definition. You are the best master for your expenses, but what we will try to do here is at least clear your concepts so that when you classify, you're clear on what are your basics. So moving on to this, you may read the definition once. It's on the screen. I'll give you 30 seconds to read that before I start talking about it. Perfect. Now, the first question which most of you all will have is, how is any other expense not related to a program? How is the finance or an HR not related to what my organization does? Fair enough. But, like, given that we are in India, our regulatory body are not very, open in these terms. They have a clear demarcation of what is program, what is not program, what will be allowed, what will not be allowed. It is always better you take a conservative approach. And how do you do that is what we're going to explain you now. The program cost is any cost that is required either A, to design your program or to implement it at field level. When I say field level, say your NGO is engaged in doing vocational training. Okay, you are either teaching some skills, say a beauty skill or tailoring skill, or say you are teaching them some sort of computer skill. Your program expenses will be having an instructor who's going to teach them. The program expenses will then also include software because that is very much needed to get the kids there. Say if you are like into service oriented, that you are servicing your other NGO, employee cost is your program. Okay, these are the two examples I'm giving. Okay, and the last is your program cost has to promote your charitable activity directly. You know, so the examples we discussed, the instructor at a computer training center is directly working for your charitable purpose, which is making kids, or elders capable of running a computer and then having a job. Or it's a service, then you are enabling the NGO to become better in their operation. The two things which you need to keep in mind program is, one is it is directly linked to designing and implementing your program on field, and last it is promoting the charitable purpose or the objective for which your organization is created. Okay, when we create an NGO, either a trust or company, we have an objective. Coming to non-program, now this pool consists of every other cost that is helping you run your organization. Okay, it is helping you to, it's like petrol that is going to help you, like run the organization in some way. Okay, it will be HR because obviously your HR has to go and search for people who will then execute your program. It will be your finance team who will then do your compliance. They will ensure that you do not make a mistake with any regulatory body and your licenses are not cancelled. So they are also important. So they will ensure your organization run. It will be your fundraising team who's getting donations to ensure that you can actually, go out there and give service, hire people, get out their salary. It can be your general admin team, your office boy, okay, your cleaners. Okay, so all of this is included here. Some portion of your office rent, electricity, whatever expense, your printing, stationery, everything comes here. These are expenses that are actually helping you run your organization, whereas the core expenses are going to ensure that your program is executed rightly on the field. Any questions here on the classification? I'll just take a pause and wait in case just put it in the chat and then we'll take it up at the end. Strategy and impact will also come in your admin to an extent. You will have to bifurcate how you do it. You'll have to see the number of hours they are spending for the program and the other classification. Okay, so that is important. We'll be coming to that at a later stage in our PPT. We will take that up as well. Okay. Now, why is it important? We've understood what is the classification, but why classify? I'm sure most of you all know this, but as time is passing, our laws are getting more stringent. Okay, they are making it more restrictive to get funding to spend on admin purposes. It is a general trend that is observed in donors today. They are not ready to fund more than 10% of your admin cost. If you make a proposal, 5 to 10% is something you will get as admin. There are some donors who will not even give you. Okay, so be ready for that. So try to keep your admin cost on the lower side, or if you have major admin cost, try to raise general fund. Coming to CSR, now this is a restriction on the company, not the organization. So the company is funding you, whatever is the 2% of their amount that they have to give, the 2% amount. Out of that, only 5% can be toward admin. So imagine the level of restriction that you're going to fund 2% of some amount. Then further, whatever amount is coming as as a result of a multiplication, that will further be restricted to 5%. So again, very restricted. Companies are not ready to give admin under CSR. Now, this is an organization perspective. When you get FCRA, whatever money you get during the year, only 20% can be used for admin purposes. Okay, so whatever amount you are getting in a year, whatever foreign donation, only 20% can be added. In case you spend more than 20%, you need to be ready to deal with the FCRA authority in India. So it's better to keep it on the lower side. Also, there are penal consequences. So that it's better to always keep it on the lower side. Any question here, please put it in the chat. We'll take it up in the end. Just to summarize, program cost directly needed. Just ask yourself, will my program be executed if this cost is not there? To give you an example, if you are questioning a finance person, if a finance person is not there, you may face some problem for a week or a month. That person is not, but your core staff is going to execute the program. So always question yourself, will my program stop by not incurring this expense? And you will get the answer. Moving to the next slide. What we are doing is we're giving simple examples just to clear any doubt that you may have. Salary of your core program team. Okay, any person working on field or directly executing your program. Okay, now just to answer Nina's question, say if that person is impact assessment. Okay, Nina, you need to understand how much of that impact person is working for program. If that impact person assisting an NGO in doing their impact evaluation, then yes, it's program. If not, if he or she is just evaluating your impact to make you enable, make your service better. Okay? So if your service is not better, your service is still going to go on right now. Okay. But that impact person is more towards an organizational development activity. So that will be non-program. Same for strategy. If a founder is spending a lot of time on strategy, strategy cost will be non-program. Now coming to material, if you are making, preparing, executing, designing any material that is for your program, whether an online content, offline content, hard book, whatever form, program. Any cost specifically incurred for program, say I'm making a video for children's education. It may not be for one program. This is for, like when I talk about a program, I'm raising awareness. This may be program. Again, you need to evaluate how much is it contributing to your program. Okay, that same question you need to ask. If this is not able, my program stop. Any technology, if you're using Zoom only for your program, please put it in the program part. But if certain portion of Zoom is used for your team meetings, your internal HR work, then you can do a simple thing, take a count of number of meetings you do with external people, which are your beneficiaries or your children or your teacher. These are what you do for internal strategy. Take the count, split up the Zoom cost in that count. Coming to non-program, it should be fairly simple. Leadership cost, if your leadership is only doing strategy, only headhunting, only fundraising, non-program, it will be difficult to justify with that program unless they directly execute some part of any program. Salary of support staff, everything, your HR, your communication, your fundraising will come here. Training and development for internal staff is again not program. Okay? So it is for your organization development. Consultant advisor fee, if there is audit, there is compliance, there is any sort of consultancy will come here. Capital expenditure, fixed assets cannot be your program unless I give an example. You are running a computer institute, then maybe again evaluated. Always consult your CA or your legal advisor and then take this call. Especially if you are an FCRA registered entity, please be mindful. Fundraising, marketing cost will again sit here. Any other operating cost. Now again, you would say rent is needed. I serve from my office. Take a head. Who is your program team? Who is your non-program team? Split up the rent. Okay. Electricity can be split up again based on head count or the area occupied in the office. Courier, if it is only for program, a lot of your work is dispatching couriers to your school or college. Take a count. Let it up. Okay. Printing kits will be program. Any other thing would be non-program. Platform, app cost, you're using a storage app or something like that. Internal purpose, non-program. Okay, these were basic examples we'll be sharing this with you. I'll just take a pause for 15 minutes before we move on to this teacher's break. Okay. You can keep adding your questions to the chat. We'll take it up at the end. Okay, let's go to the next topic. This is one question again, which we've seen in a lot of registration documents. How do you treat common cost? This is for both program and non-program. What we try to do here is give you a simple example. The logic will remain same across other examples. I'll take up a few other examples as well. Maybe not presentation, but I'll just touch upon that. We've taken the leadership cost, the typical, cost, which is for both program and non-program. While we all may agree that without the leader, the programs will not work, but that does not, that is not something the regulatory authority or the auditor may agree. Now, say you have a leader, okay, who you can have any term, a CEO, COO, founder, MD, depending on the structure of your organization, society, trust, or company. Now, this person does organization development, which is the major role. You have to do some sort of organization development, see what is happening in the organization. This person is also going to go and do fundraising, which is a very essential part in this sector. But at the same time, this person may also be going to say some schools, conducting some session, maybe part of program, maybe reviewing program material. Okay, maybe doing a lot of stuff for ensuring that the end deliverable or the end activity which is done with the kids or the beneficiary is done in the right way and it is effective and efficient. So now, how do we split up this cost? For any such common expense, the first most important thing is identify proportion or allocation key, how you can distribute it. We've given certain example here. There is timesheet. If your organization has timesheet, please use timesheet to see the number of hours. Now, this can be something you can use data from the past. You don't have to do this on real-time basis. So you have your past year timesheet, print it out or make an Excel sheet. Okay. Just find out how much time was spent by this person on fundraising. How much time did this person spend on program activity? Take a ratio, move forward. Do not try to do this on a real-time basis because it will get confusing. So please refer to past year data again. Or say you want to implement this, but you don't have past data, take up the first quarter. You're sitting in the first quarter of the year, financial year, April, May, June. Take this quarter up, document. If you don't have the timesheet, start making work logs, or you can do an ad hoc percentage. How do you do an ad hoc percentage? Set up a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting with this person. Ask them how much time do you think you give to this activity, okay, in terms of number or amount, and then develop an ad hoc allocation. Okay. Next, when you do these things, we need to be very much aware that most of our regulatory bodies are active nowadays. So you can have a visit by an FCRA, you can even have a visit by your Commissioner of Income Tax. I am assuming most of you all here would have got a provisional basis APG registration. That's what we've got this year. So that document will also say that this is all subject to doing charitable activity. So there can anytime be a site visit. What do we do to ensure that we are not in some trouble? Is you maintain documentation. Whatever was your logic for having this ratio, for splitting it up, document it in a very crisp and clear way. Make sure the job description reads in line with your allocation. Say your job description does not say that your CEO or COO is going to do program activity. Your allocation will be rejected by the authority. Okay. Have internal emails. Say this person went to a school to conduct a program, document it. Okay. Somewhere, document it. Have a proof of visit of project work. Now, for overhead and admin cost, which is purely, say, like an HR head, barely contributes to a program, or say a finance head is barely contributing. They are doing 1-2 seminars with your, audience. Do not allocate them to program unless you can really justify it and go through. Otherwise, it is an admin expense. Okay, so these are 4 important things. I just repeated, quickly. Arrive at a proportion percentage in which you can split the cost. How do you do this? You need to evaluate the person's working hours, activity, or just track their timesheet. Document it in the right way. Ensure your JD reads exactly the same way as your percentaging, and you have some sort of proof. Okay, and do not allocate pure admin cost to program. Okay, don't do that. Coming to how do you split it? Say what I've done is, say in my organization, I reached out to this person, the leadership person, conducted a interview and asked them how much time do you give for each of the activity. I further supplemented this by their timesheet. When I did an analysis based on hourly rate, I understood that 20% of the time goes for OD, which is you will be spending time hiring people, looking at how to train people within the organization. 50% is for fundraising. Person is always engaging with donors to raise funds, and 30% of the time goes in actually going and executing the program. It could be at a school or like whichever is your field of execution, and the leader does go there. This is how I split up the cost. Okay, this is a simple example. Say you have a rent split it up on headcount. You have some sort of other expenses, like you have Zoom, split it up based on the number of meeting people. These are simple examples. Allocation key is something which you will be the best judge of keeping your organization activities in mind. Quickly moving to the next slide. In case someone has any question, please drop it in the chat box. We'll take it up at the end. Handing it over to Sunny, we'll be taking you to how to make a program-wise budget if you have multiple programs.
Thanks, Anuj, for the detailed explanation for program and non-program expenses. Program-wise budget. Best way to prepare budget is to keep in mind that your program and you design that way that it's cover most of your expenses under the program. So why is it important to have program-wise budget? You may have multiple programs and donor whom you are approaching may be not interested in every program. Depend upon donor capacity and donor restrictions or donor interest. So better to maintain the program-wise budget. Also, donor may not interested in particular expenses in a particular project or in a particular program. So you have to ready with the cost, and it helps you to ask for the amount only which they can give. If you have maintained your past year spendings data program wise, then it's easy to approach donor with the proper details. Most of the donor, as per our experience, ask for the impact data with comparison of your actual expenses. That will be good if you maintaining that. Also, with the help of the program-wise data, then it's easy to management to take strategic decisions of your organization for the future restriction or any future decisions they can take. How you can design the budget program-wise? List of your multiple programs if you have, and identify the cost which is common for the all the program as well as the specific program. Common cost you can allocate as per program time, size, and examples I can take. Like salary, you can allocate as per staff time spending on, as Anuj earlier explained in previous slide. Time spending on each program and the best way to maintain the time sheet, so it's easy to allocate the salary related expenses. Also for the rent, electricity, you can allocate as per how much space you're using for program, or how much for the non-program team space using, or program team using. Based on that you can divide the rent also. Pure admin expenses, you need to avoid to allocate the program expenses like development of non-program team, training for non-program team. As per our overall experience, most donors agree up to 10% utilization of fund for the admin purpose only. Next slide, Manish. Yeah, some of the contingency and control measures you have to take. So it's not sure that what you budgeted that only you can spend. For better way, you can keep aside some of amount for additional emergency expenses. If like you may require additional program person in the next year, so keep in mind also that pandemic like situation, you need to keep some amount extra to deal with this kind of situation. It's good to have an approval system if you're spending more than your budget or any additional amount you're spending. So it's good to have a proper approval process so you can spend more than your budget. Our advice to keep track on your actual and budgeted expenses on monthly basis. At least finance teams monthly can check or maintain any ratio data. So any increase or slightly increase or decrease, they can inform their management team. And if any major rise, you can see the take for in expenses, then you can take the approval with the notice of the management. Also, it's good if management review the budget versus actual quarterly basis. In case you need to change the budget between the year, you can change it with your whatever your policy says with proper approval of your management and as per your finance policy. Also keep in mind that situation like pandemic while preparing the maintaining the budget. So you need to keep in mind this situation will happen, or so you have to keep aside some amount so you can deal with this kind of situation. Here are some of important points of donor presentations. Always have in detailed program wise budget with design of you can transfer it easily in a specific format provided by the donor. Providing details expenses data to donor related to your admin expenses with setting up cap of your total donation you are asking like 5 to 10%, not more than that. It's our recommendation to keep per project or per unit cost like per school, per partner, per project, or any location based if your organization is running. Best practice is to maintain your impact data in numeric terms. It's necessary because most of the donors ask for the once the project completed or the period completed, then ask for the numeric data to check the what is the impact of this project. Also, proposed budget should be in a reasonable manner, not like too high or too low. It's need to match with your existing capacity. Donor may not proceed with this kind of proposal if proposals if you show high amount or very low amount. It's not matching with your existing capacity.
Thanks for that, Sunil. So this is where we end. So we just give a quick recap. Also try to answer most of the questions. We spent 2 minutes just recapping the most crucial and important points in budgeting. The 5 to 10 points, and then we move to questions. A is that always we have clear communication within your organization. There are many instances where say one department comes up mid-year and say, you know, it can be as simple as I need a laptop, but you've not accounted for it, which will now cost you 35 to 40,000. So you need to search how to find, you know, the fund from existing donor, because we also need to respect the fact that each donor has its own utilization condition restriction. The funds may not be, you know, they can't freely flow from one purpose to the other. So please have clear communication. Start the budgeting practice in advance, say at least 4 months before you start the year. Okay. Post that, have a list of expenses before you start the budgeting. Do not identify based on, you know, okay, I done this last time, we continue with the same expense. Many a time, NGOs realize midway that, oh, I did not account for this expense. Say now, we are in a position where offices may start, or we may have to take up co-working spaces. So if you are a virtual organization, then you have a new cost. So then, if, you know, this is something to start accounting for now. Post that, we give it for expenses which need to be, you know, considered salary, which is important for your technology cost, your compliance cost, your program related printing, travel, all those. Program, not program, very simple question: does my program stop? Okay. And then obviously keep thinking more. Try to not allocate core admin costs to program, but say, as we discussed an example, there is someone who is doing both activities, pick it up based on some sort of ratio. Okay. Methods for forecasting, we said there is trend analysis, see your past trend, use quotation, do a benchmarking study, reach out to NGOs who sector the same site, and they will help you. Coming to your program wise allocation, very simple. Again, the same way you can set it up, you know, as Sunny explained. Take it, what we recommend is having a timesheet or some sort of workflow, or then allocate the percentages based on discussion. That do have that, because nowadays donors are wanting to understand, you know, in depth of which program are you working. So if you have multiple programs, they may relate to one program, may not relate to the other. Okay. So please try to factor that and set up your first program, right? And in that you can do the admin. Contingencies, try to keep a buffer of 5 to 10%. It's always good. There are always some expenses that come up mid-year. Review your budget. That is not covered here, but that is a part of the cash flow, and you keep comparing the actual versus budget, and you try to minimize that gap as you proceed through the year, and also understand that what went wrong at time of budgeting. This will help you next year. You can revise your mid-year, but revise your budget mid-year, but please take approvals, pass resolution, and keep it on record. Coming to donor presentation, one part of budgeting is having control over your internal expenses, but the other important part for us, at least in this sector, is to give a clear image to the donor, and always right numbers will have the right name. So, try to keep it as transparent as you can. Try to have impact numbers ready, just not past, but also say the funds you are raising, what will be the impact on that. Try to give some range or number that so and so student could benefit, and so many people would benefit, something like that. What can be your project cost if they just want to fund your one school or something like that. So try to have those numbers ready. Those are the most important points. Apart from that, we're trying to answer your question. Most questions are answered in the chat. Devina, would you like to pick up a few questions which may not be answered?
No, I think you picked up the questions, but if there's anybody who wants to ask a question now, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions. I know we're almost at 4, but Anuj, Sanil will stay on for another 10-15 minutes. Should anybody have questions, if you want to just chat with the two of them, please stay on, unmute yourself and ask the questions.
One thing we have someone that asking the question, one most important question that is coming from most people here is why can't say capital expenditure be programmed? Just to clarify that, now what happens is, when you talk about capital expenditure, it ranges, multiple. It has multiple items. It can be a computer, it can be a laptop, it can be a furniture, your AC, some sort of construction that you do in office. Okay, these are all capital expenditure. Okay, it also includes buying of space. Now, how treat this as admin or program? There's again a simple logic. As I've answered in the chat, say we are in a activity that requires you, you to have computers to share the type of, welfare that you want to do for people. Obviously, it will be a program cost, but that has to be spelled out to the donor. Okay, you can't just tell the donor I need to buy computer to try to emphasize on why you need computer. Computer, laptop may still come under your program, but you cannot take an AP or a furniture or space, construction renovation into program. Unless, see, if it is a school, then what, you again have to have a discussion with your auditor. What we always recommend is before this classification, do sit with your auditor, spend some time and get their inputs on what is program, what is non-program in your case as well. Yeah, we can take questions. You can talk with chat box or you can unmute yourself.
Sanuj, we have a question. Actually, we have a couple of questions. One is from Vanita. We've noticed that organizations create a very comprehensive budget in the start of the year, but they do not, but they don't get looked at going forward. Can you shed some light on how often should the budget be monitored and best practices?
Sure. Yeah, coming to that, Vanita, what we recommend is monthly, but that does not effectively happen in most organizations. Quarterly should be like a mandatory review. The leadership should sit with the finance team and review it on a quarterly basis. You need to see a simple variance, which is again simple. What had you planned, vis-a-vis what happened? So what has happened, take that, subtract the number what you had planned, and you'll get the difference, whether higher or lower. Okay. Now, do evaluate it, do document it. Whatever decisions are being taken should be kept on record. It can be a simple resolution or it can be a minute of a meeting, but quarterly review is mandatory. Also, since you will be having 2 rounds by the middle of the year, you can then, based on whatever experience you have for the first quarter, first 2 quarters, you can change the budget. You can increase the cost for few items, reduce it for some items. So, quarterly review is what we recommend. Okay, that's another question from Geeta. Given CSR rules and utilization, how does one reconcile budget with actual utilization, especially good question. So this is more from a utilization perspective. What I would like to tell you is that when you do a budget, do also create some sort of, try to make some format where you also consider the utilization restriction. Now, most CSR utilization restrictions are either, the time frame. Right now, anyways, once you get the funding, you need to ensure you utilize it by the 31st March of that year. So in that case, do ensure that your utilization, so put your utilization also across month. Try to make a utilization sheet. Say a donor gave you 10 lakhs, you need to use it, they gave it to you in June, you need to use it by the coming March. Try to split it up and then try to allocate that in the budget. Maybe you can use comments in your Excel budget and say, okay, this 5 lakhs for this employee will come out of the 10 lakh donation that we receive from the CSR company. Okay, you can create tags. You can also, Excel, create macros or make a dashboard to see where the funds are going. But utilization is altogether a separate topic, and we will try to work it out with Devina. We can do a session on that. But yeah, try to combine your budget and utilization, create comments or use tags, and keep a track of where the funding is getting utilized. And as far as utilization is concerned, your actual numbers will also have an effect, because if you accounted for a 5 lakh salary which turned into 6 lakh, your utilization will go for a toss. So the remaining 5 lakh will get reduced to 4 lakh. So this is all to be seen in a very holistic way. Utilization is a separate topic. But right now, what I can tell you is, across the number, put some comment or something like that. For what purpose are you doing? Yes. Any questions?
I think there's there's a question about the 5% of the CSR
I would like to take it up.
But any other questions? Anybody who wants to type it out or just unmute yourself? We can understand this has been this may have just seemed like a bit of a heavy session, because it's a lot of numbers and theory. Please take the time to think about all the messages, key messages and learnings that we got today. Should you have any questions, please feel free to even write to us with those. I see one hand raised. Please go ahead. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Godfrey from IDA Pune. My question was with regard to the admin expenses. So how do we decide to put the admin expenses? Is it on the total budget cost? For example, if it's 10 lakh overall budget, okay. So that is how we decide the admin expenses, or how do put, because it's given 5 to 10%. What is the ideal number to put the admin cost so that the donor is convinced, because most of the time we face this challenge. They say the admin cost is too high, though we keep it at 8 or 6%, then too. So I wanted the inputs from y'all expertise, since y'all could help us. Thank you.
So I'll break up my answer in 3 parts. The first is when you create a budget, okay, you, like we said, try to split it up between program, non-program. So say now you have the number, you have a total, you have a program, and you have a non-program. Now, when you do that at the first step, at the start of the year, just take your non-program and divide it by your total cost and see where does it fit. It should not be more than 10% is what we recommend. You could go up to 50, but 10 is something we should try to restrict it at, because as you said, donors are not willing to fund it. So that is the first step. The second step is when you make a proposal. Okay, now when you make a proposal, you're making a proposal for 10 lakhs to ensure that the admin number does not hurt the donor eye. Please keep it between 5 to 10%, because that will help you have a further conversation with the donor to take it to the next level. So if your admin number is really like big, may not work. So again, this was the second part, that is from your pitching perspective. The first was budget. Coming to the last part, which is the actuals. Okay. Now, say if you're an FCRA registered entity, the foreign donation that has come in the year, out of that only 20% can be used on an expense. So that cap is on the money that has come to you. Okay. Apart from that, other laws at present do not have such admin related stuff, which is very stringent. But in general, because say you are telling your donor your admin cost is 10%, your at the time of budgeting also. So when the actual numbers are also there, as we said, try to monitor it on a monthly basis. You can't do it on a quarterly basis, and take the actual number and also check whether they fit in the 10% bracket. So that is the answer to your question. Let me know if you have any other doubts.
Thanks, Anuj, for answering it. Thank you.
Any other question we have?
Anuj, we could take one last question. It's from Aishwarya. How do you calculate per child cost or per teacher cost? Is it only program cost allocated to program divided by number of people served? Or do we factor admin cost as well?
So again, so Aishwarya say now if you are doing it for a program, what we suggest is to know the, to give an per person cost. You can take the whole cost also, but what we suggest is keep it at your program cost. So take your program cost and then divide it by the number of people who are going to benefit out of that. That is the ideal thing. But given the practical challenges, it may not be possible at the start of the year, or even when you do an actual, you may have some sort of overlap. So when you're giving like a per program cost or a per student cost or a per teacher cost, you can factor some admin cost into that. Which you could then, there are two ways. Either you take your entire cost and split it up by the number of children, okay, or your teacher or your projects to get the per unit cost. Okay. And then you give that number to the donor. But the next question the donor will ask you, does this also have admin cost? So do keep the other number ready. There is no concrete answer to this. But what we recommend is do have a pure program cost per child. Because again, as I said in the start, maybe the HR, the finance person is contributing in some way to your program, but the core of your, like the program is totally dependent on, say, in case of like, a service company, on the consultant or the mentor or the manager who's going and recording that program. So try to keep it program cost per child and not the entire cost. But say if you're giving an admin pitch as well to the donor may want to ask how many children is it benefiting, and they will directly divide it by the number of children. But when you're talking about program, it is recommended to keep it at the program cost. Sanil, you can add to it.
Yeah, it's depend upon what you exactly you dividing. I think admin cost you need to factor it at any cost because admin cost will come. You need to factor that expenses also while dividing or per child or per teacher cost. You need to factor the admin cost.
Do keep both numbers ready. So like as Sanil rightly said, if you're asking for a total amount while pitching, then take both, because then you're also asking for admin, right? But say if you're doing it for an impact communication, or you're saying how much did your core activity, then try to keep it at program. Some donors may ask you for a pure program cost. Any other question?
Okay, all right. I think, I don't know if we have any other questions coming our way just yet. But thank you so much, Anuj, Sanil, for taking the time out and taking this session for us. If you've been reading the chat box, there's a lot of comments about how it's been a very interesting learning session. Thank you so much. Thank you the rest of all the participants for staying on. Like I said, should you have any questions, please feel free to share, just drop an email and we'll get back to you. There were some questions about the recording, so we will be sharing the recording of this session. Please refer to that as well. With that, on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.